Yes, and it's time for us to have our opening speaker for day one. It's none other than Nick King. He's the president, chief product and marketing officer at Snowplow, the leader in data creation and behavioral data. Snowplow is the world's leading data creation platform. They empower any company to create their own AI-ready behavioral data to fuel advanced data applications. Today, we will hear about behavioral data creation for AI, delivering value and insights from Nick. I'm super excited. Let's have Nick on the stage here. Don't hesitate to ask questions to Nick. We'll be taking them all after his lightning talk. Nick, are you ready?
I'm ready to go. Thank you so much for having me. It's good to be here.
Awesome. All right, Nick, take it away. We'll see you in about 10 minutes.
All right, everybody. So one of the things I get asked a lot is like, what is data creation? How did this come about? And so to really sum it up, when we think about all the data we have to deal with every day, a huge advantage of it is having the right data. And so we spent, the early days of like grabbing data from everywhere, really sifting for gold, trying to figure out how we make do with data from other sources. And what we quickly realized is rather than trying to like turn existing data into something more useful, it was actually pretty easy for us to go set about creating data. And when you create it, it allows you to do things, which is you make the data more explainable, you make it compliant and unbiased, accurate and predictive. And what this means is as you trust this data to be accurate and real time, you can directly create this into applications. So an example here is Der Spiegel. It's a German website, but what they actually do is they're real time creating their website based on the data they're experiencing, and then they use that data to then inform other advertising models and other components. You might be wondering, like, how does this expand and what does this do for other types of data problems we have? So today, the status quo for how we do most of our ML models and BI models is really about data preparation and then focusing on how we create data applications. So this is a pretty common flow, right? You go grab data from different sources. You might grab it from web tools. You might grab it from things like Salesforce, your own mobile application, and you run it through a pipeline. And then you go through and stage that pipeline. You combine it. You fix the bad data. You do all the GDPR stuff, and then the poor data team is then asked to go and manage all these reports, make use of that data, maintain it and push it out and do the analytics type technology or AI and ML. And so this is pretty typical, right? You spend a lot of time prepping the data, and then when you finally get the data prepped, you then spend the time on the data applications. Now, I don't know about you, but I prefer to spend my time on the applications versus the preparation. And that's really how I found Snowplow and how a lot of our customers find Snowplow. Is like, okay, there's got to be a better way than spending all this time doing data prep. And really what people want to focus on is building these data applications. That's ultimately what the business is asking us for as data engineers and data application architects. So data creation is different. What we do is we actually go through and we instrument or use webhooks or different ways of creating events from all these different sources, and we create a unified event stream. And what that allows you to do is you create effectively an atomic table. And that atomic table is effectively a time series, atomic event table that allows you then to model the data into whether you want an AI or BI ready table. An AI table being a feature table, a BI table usually being a metric table. And what's really cool about this approach is that as opposed to defining schema at the beginning or schema first or schema second, we have a way of doing this. So you always have a dynamic schema. So you almost have schema always. And good events pass into the atomic data store, and bad events end up in a bad pipeline, and that bad pipeline can then be updated to your schema or could be treated as bad events. And what this means is once you've set this up, 80% of your time then shifts to the right-hand side. And what that means is you've got time to go look at analytics type solutions. You can see different types of marketing things we'll do here, like lifetime value and engagement scoring. What gets really interesting is you can use that same data to power your AI ML applications. So you can go through and look at how you do propensity scoring. All these things we're probably always getting asked for. And then on the far right-hand side, you start seeing applications like composable CDP, and we're seeing a lot more of this recently. And what this means is that because the data warehouse is now getting to include a lot of the company's data, but also it's organized in such a way that you can fire events and activations off of that data, we're now seeing this type of approach being asked to then go and add back into systems to drive changes in the way things perform. So it's a totally different way of thinking about how you create your pipelines. It is different. It's different from the traditional ETL approach. But what is cool is this now creates a real-time streaming architecture as well for you to power these types of applications. So you're probably wondering what type of applications this can create. So for us, we look at it in two dimensions. One is by industry. So when you go through and look at all the data you can create and you build it into this pipeline, it allows you to go through, fire the event from, say, a website or an application or an IoT device, enrich it from things like Salesforce and other sources, then you have this atomic table that then you can model into these different types of data products. You end up with the ability to go through and create things like segmentation, dynamic pricing, and go through and look at how you create customer 360 profiles, and really take a whole different way as to how you build the data products for your organization. The cool thing here is that traditionally, we sort of let other applications define how we look at this data. When you do it with a data creation point of view, the data grammar, the way you explain the data, is completely customized for your business, which means people can understand it easier, work with it faster, but you might have different things that evolve with your business over time. So that customer 360 profile can be constantly evolving with you. We also see things here, which is, we talked about good events, and sometimes there's bad events. And what we often see bad events used for is things like security. So we have customers that look for particular types of attacks in the events that are getting created. We'll pull those out of the pipeline, but for them, the bad events are sometimes more impactful than the good events. The other thing here is that we're seeing a huge shift in the way that data governance is happening globally. We're seeing customers really being asked to change the way their data flows, whereas each country kind of changes its laws. We just had Denmark ban Google Analytics. We expect them to ban a lot more of the third-party type data tracking tools. And this allows you to dynamically adjust the way you think of these data pipelines, put yourself in control of what's happening there, and be able to continue to deliver models that are impactful for your business. And then finally, in the same vein, with healthcare, we can really protect customers' sensitive information. So lastly, in the sort of lightning round approach, I really want to give you an idea of how we think about business units as well. So each of these different organizations are really asking for what I would call a data product. And so in marketing, you're often here like, hey, can I get this data for data analytics? Can I get this data for ad retargeting? And rather than having to build these each bespoke every time they're asked for it, what we advocate for is building data products that actually map to this catalog. And therefore, you can publish these to your organization and say, okay, here's how you build these data applications on these data products. And then you can use those to then inform, an easier way of working with the different teams. So it's a really simplified approach. As I said, it is different, but it does totally transform the way you think about how data creation and how you can build data products and applications in your business. So that is a very rapid, lightning fire way of going through how we think about data creation. So I'll pass it back to Ravit, who's going to ask me some questions along the way.
Awesome, Nick. Such great insights. Thanks for, telling us more about data creation. I'm sure we have a lot of questions, but let Kate ask some questions. I do have a few questions for you, which I'll ask after Kate. So, Kate?
Well, it's only fair that I go to the audience first. I know they've been exploding with the hashtag DATAcated, and that was the real rapid fire talk. I love it, Nick. You flew through that.
Yeah.
I think some people are hearing about Snowplow for the first time, and they're thinking about Snowflake. So Scott Taylor is asking is there any relationship between Snowflake, the Snowplow, maybe leverage Snowflake for anything?
Yeah, so we are an open source product that started about 10 years ago. So we called ourselves Snowplow way back then. We do work closely with Snowflake, but there's no formal relationship. We're not kind of connected there. I will say this, we really have seen a shift with cloud data warehouses. And so both the Snowflakes and the Databricks and the Redshifts and the BigQueries of the world all kind of gravitate to how we think about creating data and how we can provide that into a very accurate event stream inside their data warehouse. And I will say this as well, is because of those architectures, it shifted the sort of the center of gravity used to be in all these surrounding applications. And you kind of put the data in the data warehouse. Mm-hmm. But with Snowflake getting so prevalent and able to scale the way it does, we now see that those sort of business rules, that logic is living in the data warehouse. And so we fuel that and push that back into a number of other systems like Salesforce and others. So close relationship, but not related.
I assume so, but snow is snow. And I see we've got some great questions coming in. So Lars is asking, what if you regularly need to combine data from different data products? Do you create a second layer of data products at that point?
Yeah, so I think what we're seeing happen with data products is there are some kind of core tables, data products that exist, right? There's always like a customer table, like a products table, a campaigns table. We see those as being like very robust data products. I think also we tend to see data applications might pull one or two data products to build those applications. I do think there is, like, I don't know if data product architectures have got this sort of advanced yet, but I do think there is like tier 1 data products and then tier 2 data products. And I think that's where this question was going to, is like, do you take like the customer table and the campaigns table and build like a tier 2 data product, which might be, okay, here's the customer campaigns in Australia on Tuesday table. And so I do think there's almost like blue check mark data products that we see tend to happen across most organizations today.
Okay, pretty cool. One question from Fernando here. How do the laws of each country affect data creation? What's the thing there?
Such an interesting question right now, right? Like, I think for us, like, if we watch what's happening in the EU right now, it's really interesting. So EU obviously created GDPR, but then each individual country is now going through and interpreting GDPR and how it affects their users. And so what we're watching closely is how it started with Austria and Germany. They had a very strict interpretation of where data should be and what data sovereignty existed. And they both kind of determined that third-party data tracking, so like Google Analytics and those, actually was breaking the intent of GDPR by the way it was pseudo-anonymizing and pushing data around the globe. And what's rippled from there was Austria, Germany, Denmark, Italy, France have now changed their laws to say, hey, you have to be very conscious of third-party data creation and how you do that. So the first thing is to, one, understand each of those different data sovereignty rules. And the way, when you do data creation, you're actually able to set policy in your pipeline that says, hey, this looks like a Danish event, move it this way. Or you could say, okay, here is the policy I want to ensure that only first-party data creation can get through. And this is something unique that Snowplow does, is because we're first-party end-to-end, we actually fall on the right side of the law. We're like, okay, we're first-party data creation. You can collect information on your customers as long as you manage it appropriately. And so that's what's really important, is being able to adjust with what each country is requiring, but also maintain the integrity of that data pipeline.
Right. And now there's a comment in here with a question from a Vinay about data grammar. So it's a new word that he picked up. So asking you to just explain a little bit more, and says that patient data safety is very critical, as touched by yourself.
Yeah. So when I talk about data grammar, what data grammar is if you think about, if you go and grab a bunch of tables today, like from Salesforce and CNS and other places, you go grab those tables, you might see like customers used to describe customer in one, and one might be, cust underscore name might be another one. So there's the grammar evolves from product to product. Mm-hmm. But as an organization, you're trying to always define your data grammar, right? Like, what are the events? What are the entities? How do you describe those? And, the first part of exploring data is trying to get your head around, okay, what does this person mean by their column names? What are the events? What are the entities? And so we're a big believer that you should, when you create your own data, you can define your own grammar. I'm a chicken farmer, so I want to define chickens and farms and feed and what have you. I'm a steel company, and that grammar is really important. And when you're grabbing from third-party sources, you're kind of inheriting their grammar, and you're trying to manipulate their grammar to solve the problems you're solving. So suddenly, that column was originally meant to describe chicken feed is now describing steel chemicals, and you're trying to figure it out. And that grammar creates lots of confusion across your organization, and it puts a huge cognitive load on your teams. So trying to figure out the grammar all the time is hard to do. And because we maintain the schema, then grammar is able for us to be much easier. So you can call it the right thing and explain it naturally.
Very interesting, kind of related to the data literacy and data dictionary and all of that. Same theme. Yeah. I love it. I just haven't heard of data grammar before, so that's a new one for me as well.
Yeah. I think we talk a lot at the cognitive load of data engineers and just what it takes to manage this. And if you're looking at all these tables and trying to bring them together, you're always trying to figure out, okay, where does that put together? And so the data grammar is a way of explaining, events and entities. We also talk about the data language, which I think, data kind of plugs that same sort of thesaurus of things we spoke about before.
Yes. All right, Ravi, any questions from you before I continue on?
One last question. Obviously, Nick, I know, with Snowplow, you do a lot with the integration. So how does Snowplow integrate preferred sources and destination, and how is it helping businesses out there? Just want to learn a little about that.
Yeah, what we see with that is we have a huge amount of SDKs and different ways of connecting and embedding into different sources. And so that's really critical for us, right? Is we're really data first, code first. And so you're able to go through an instrument. We can also accept webhooks and all the different sort of sources you might have. So we enable that for pretty much any source you can think of. As far as destination goes, same deal, right? You want to send it to Redshift, you want to send it to Databricks or Snowflake. We actually build loaders that help you go do that. And as we all know, right, like they all say they kind of work the same, but they really don't quite work the same. So we build a lot of optimization so that you can load fast into Redshift and Databricks and BigQuery or what have you. So that's really important. And like we're really, as I said, data first. So we think a lot about our data engineers and data architects. And so we try to build that into both our open source as well as our commercial product.
Okay, awesome. We'll just take 2 more questions from the audience. They just keep coming in. It's hard to stop this. So Mike Nash is asking, with this huge interest now in data mesh, how does Snowplow address this decentralized thinking?
Yeah, I love this question. So we talk about this a lot. Like I think data mesh was really designed as a way of like allowing a data team to publish their data in a way that other teams could access, which makes sense. But I think where data mesh and I'd say data products are evolving to now is that really you want to publish the whole business a defined data product that sort of brings together not just the data mesh itself, but also defines the schema of that data product, lets you know the lineage of that data product, guarantees that data product is compliant and unbiased. And so I think the evolution of decentralized data products and data mesh is to really shift and provide these data as a product, data products to the organization. So it's kind of building on what data mesh set out to do, but adding more business context and compliance and sort of thinking so that other teams can go consume that. And I think that's really important because what happens is you build like a data mesh and people can kind of interpret that however they want. We're a data product. You say, this is the customer data product. Everyone has to use this data product. And this is the official blessed version. I like to say blue check mark, right? Like kind of like the validated user. I think that's where it's evolving. That's how we address it as a combination of like data products that build on data mesh.
I like the idea of the blue check mark as well.
Yeah.
All right. Last question we'll take from George Firikin. What is next for Snowplow? So tell us, what can we expect to see in the next maybe couple of years? Let's go a few years.
Years, months, days. I think for us, look, we recently did a survey where we surveyed lots of data analysts and data engineers. And I was really surprised at just how hard the role has become. The requests are insane. We're asked these things all the time. We're expected to perform miracles on terrible data. So one of the things we're committing to is like, we just have lots of experience building this. So we're an open source company. We're going to start sharing more of these data products and how we create these data products with more people. So we want to start sharing that. I think number 2 for us is we're getting asked more and more about, okay, how do we do these complex deployments for, managing GDPR in different places, but also how do we add this to more applications and have a smaller version? So we're quickly looking at like how our open source solves that, how our commercial product solves that, and really ultimately going back to our first mission, which is making data engineers and analysts' lives easier to build epic data products that solve problems and be less stressed, which I think is a good thing.
I love it. I think
100%.
the new slogan should be perform miracles on terrible data. I love that quote. Because if you can do that, then you can do anything, right? Because there's terrible data everywhere. So
if we solve the terrible data problem, then we should be able to perform a lot more miracles.
Yes, we'll perform less miracles if you have better data, right? Then it's just business as usual. So
it's I like it.
Nick, I want to thank you so much for being our keynote speaker here, the first one of the day for Modern Data Fest. Thank you so much for taking the time for this.
Thanks, everybody. Take care. Bye.